Boy, howdy. Oh, boy, howdy.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the second rendition of Clack Fancy. How's everyone doing?
Hi, guys.
Feel
Wait,
right.
you asking us or chat?
Well,
Yeah, everyone.
both.
How's everyone
Both.
doing?
All
I am both
encompassing.
fine and dandy.
Fine, Andy.
I'm good.
Good.
Uh-huh.
So, we've got more. Hey, Goat, what's up, man?
Howdy.
So I want to start off by saying hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining. I hope that you can connect with some folks today and have some fun. I think to steal directly from X on Deck, since they're kind enough to host today, I think maybe it would be fun to do a minute or so of what's on your desk currently. What's on your desk? So I'll go first since I just built it last night. I have a pink E8.5 with CRP Arabic on it. I think that's probably backwards on everyone's screen. So that's, oh, nope, doesn't look like that. Good. So anyways, turned out nice. I like it.
What about you, Chewy?
My polycarbonate Singa V1 I bought from Lang because of Luke Barron. So irony that they're both here, and this is the board that I'm using with it because I tried his at NorCal and was like, I want one of these, and then Lang was selling his. So easy.
Boom shaka.
I've got my Sirius with Bingsu on it. So it's got olive creams in it. Feels good. Sounds good. Looks pretty good. And it's super light, which is an undervalued trait of some boards. Sometimes you want something that's just a little bit light.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree with that.
So what's on your desk, Matthew?
Can anybody take a guess?
I'm going to guess an iron.
Yeah.
Go.
Navy iron with Mizu.
Oof. Oh, I thought that was cafe.
Oh, I think it is cafe. My bad. I get them confused sometimes.
How could you? One is like one of the best sets that was made last year, and it sold really well, and
then the other
everybody
cafe.
was really happy, and then the other one was cafe.
And I guess
Luke, what's on your desk, man?
That's the Phantom number 2.
Nice.
With CRP Tulip on it. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And Goat, I know you don't have a video, but you can tell us what's on your desk if you like, or what switches are in it.
It's actually funny that Osiris had the Sirius because I actually have a prototype Sirius. I believe it used to be it was like the second or third run or second and third attempt. It would have been, it's because the weight mounting system is actually on the outside of the board. I'll have to put pictures up later for it.
Oh, cool.
But I have that built with Okamochi V1s and a steel plate. So
good times. Well, thanks everyone. Figured that would be a nice intro into the conversation that we're going to have about keyboards in a second. Quick shout out to everyone. We've got some giveaways towards the end of today in a couple of hours. And those people that have donated, thank you to Mr. Petrov, I1A, and Kibo. We have a lot less giveaways than last time. That's intentional. We wanted to see if we could have more giveaways nearing the Christmas time for the December edition of Clack Fancy. And I didn't properly give shout outs to those who gave giveaways last time. So this is kind of a list. Novel Keys, Canon Keys, Key Company, Archetype, Keycap, Smith+Rune. Thanks again, guys. Switch Couture, Zap Cables, Brez, I1A, Prime Caps, Divinity, Teal Technic, and Mexico. Thank you for all the giveaways. I hope everyone got them. I hope you enjoy them. And for those of you that are on the stream that don't quite understand how this works, this is just a space for a virtual meetup. Okay, so we've got this stream here where we're going to have some topics where we're going to talk about switches, answer beginner questions. We're going to have the guys of Smith+Rune talk about keyboard design. We'll have a typing workshop. Maybe at the end we'll play some games before we do giveaways. But really, there's a bunch of voice channels in there, and join random ones. Talk to people. Be kind. Turn on your video if you want. Just this exists so that people can connect and not feel alone in the never-ending quarantine that we are experiencing right now. So, gentlemen in the chat, does anyone have anything to add? Recommendations for Meetup that you would think people should know about, or best practices?
As Lang said, go in, meet people. That's the whole point of this. This community is great because we make cool keyboards, but it's the best because the people are the best. And if you are a beginner, if you're someone new, there is actually a designated beginner chat, and it is a judgment-free zone. If you ask what is a keyboard, we will answer it. And if you want to go a lot more detailed into that, we'll answer it as well. So
I love it. So speaking of that, after our chat here with the two gentlemen of Smith+Rune, who you see that have the shorter beards, Um, or well, I guess I can't. Eric's got grown a beard now too. But anyways, we're going to talk to them about keyboards. But after that, we're actually going to answer questions, beginner questions that maybe either get answered in text so that we can have them streamed and saved for later, and also just kind of questions in general. So if you've got them, you can either save them for then or ask them now, and we'll do our best to get to them. So with that said, I think it's a good pivot now to talk about keyboards. So at the last event, we had an artisan panel, we had a 40s discussion, we had vendor perspective, but we didn't have like a keyboard designer or gentlemen that have designed keyboards outside of the 40s realm, really, on. So we brought on our friends from Smith+Rune to talk today, and I've got some questions for them. So in the stream chat, I've put a link to their Discord. If you want to join that and check out, I think they have a group buy coming up soon. So shield time is over there. So,
but real quick before we get started, I will be back
yes.
on in an hour and 45 minutes with Osiris. So, love you guys.
I thought you meant 45 minutes because I've been posting times in Eastern.
Who knows, man?
Well,
you let me know.
Time, I'll holler. When it's question time, I'll yell at you.
Just come in and start screaming.
Just come in and start screaming.
So I want to see a flex off between Turtle and Luke Barron.
During your intro, Luke. Let's see how big they are. That sounds really bad. Anyways, bye, Chewart.
Oh, Chewart.
Oh my God. Okay, so gentlemen, would you please introduce yourselves? Maybe Matt, you go first.
Oh wow, I was gonna bite off other intros, but okay. Yeah, my name is Matt. I am one of the co-owners of Smith+Rune. We make cool keyboards.
I mean, that's subjective. You don't want to say literally anything else about yourself? Just
well,
I put him on the spot, and he's really struggling here, guys.
I got nothing. I'm blanking.
That's okay. Maybe so he's Vox Key. He's kind of our he's kind of their North Star, and saying this isn't Smith+Rune, or this isn't an iron, or this is, right? He's helping guide people who say you should make a pink keyboard. And then he says, well, maybe not.
A little bit of self-deprecation there from Lang.
I guess you could say, in how Smith+Rune works, I guess I'm more dad and Luke is more mom. That's kind of
face you just made.
Kind of how it's broken down. Yeah, I mean, I guess what information is
I don't know. I thought you would tell them anything about yourself. That's fine. Luke, go. L Baron. Luke.
My name's Luke Barron. I'm, L Baron on Discord, Geek Hack, Reddit, all of it. I'm a systems engineer for an aerospace company. I'm a mechanical engineer by my degree. I got into mechanical keyboards back in 2010 with a DOS Keyboard 3 because of StarCraft 2 and every single pro using like mechanical keyboards. I had one at home. I had one at work. So that way it was like the exact same typing feel at both of them. So as I'm working 8 hours a day, I'm feeling it. Then I get home and play StarCraft, I'm feeling it. I had like a few like day 9 keycaps and stuff on that one. 2016, 2017, I think was when I first got my I'd say custom mech or whatever. I ordered a K-type because I was trying to find a white fox, but then they had the group buy for the K-type coming up. So I got that. And then just, started going down that rabbit hole. First custom keycap was the Tahoe Miami set, which I feel most of us do for the $40 off of Amazon.
Yeah.
First GMK keycap set was Miami Nights back in the day.
It's a solid set,
Still
though.
have it. Yep. I did have to sacrifice 3 keys from that to send to our manufacturer to have them do destructive testing on to make sure that the artisan keycaps for the Iron 180 matched perfectly to what the GMK row 1 profile and everything was.
So that's actually an interesting question. Maybe we can segue into design stuff. What maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think earlier I had kind of posed this question of what are some things or resources that go into the creation and design of a keyboard? Like, you know, what are some specific things that you've done? That's an interesting anecdote about I had to send them a GMK cap for them to cut in half. What are some other things that you've done to help understand how a keyboard is made?
So when me and Matt first started designing the iron, he basically gave me a list of specifications kind of that he wanted for the board, like a center USB-C, you know, a gasket mounted board, top seamless design, things like that. I'd never designed a keyboard before, although I was pretty good at SolidWorks from college and just doing other stuff for fun, drawing and whatnot on the side. So I basically started with the layout they wanted, and it wasn't AIO3's plate generator. It was, what's that other one, like the Swilba or whatever? Or, I don't know, if you just Google search plate generator, you can basically...
Swill KB.
Yeah, Swill
There you
KB. You can basically copy and paste a the KLE inside of it, and it'll generate a plate for you, so at least it didn't have to go around measuring every single switch and where all of them are placed and where all the spaces are. So whenever I design a keyboard, I always start off from the layout itself and make the plate first. So I get the general shape from the plate, and then I'll go out from there and design like the inside bezel, the outside bezel of the top case, extrude it up, extrude it down, start adding all the different features to it, design the underside case, in this case a top or a seamless top mount case on that. And then just get feedback going back and forth between team members and whatnot. So I really didn't have like any guides or anything that I followed. I did send a picture to you earlier, Jeff. I don't know if it's possible for you to share on screen.
Yeah,
So,
I sent it in the stream chat, a link to it directly. It's quite the photo.
So I didn't have any guides, but I had a lot of good premium keyboards to kind of take measurements and stuff off of. To be like, how high does the top of the case need to sit above the plate in order to best hide keycaps? You know, I really like the look of this chamfered edge on a Jane. How big do I think that is? Just stuff like that. How thick should I make sidewalls on the side, and measuring them for various thickness and things. So I kind of just did it from more of an analytical approach of taking things that I like best from other keyboards and then applying it to the one that we were designing.
Yeah, I think I to expand on what Luke's saying and to back it up to my botched intro. I'm also an engineer, but of the software variety. But I studied engineering in school outside of software. And my approach kind of to product design is analytical as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why Luke and I work so well together in that area. But as Luke said, we kind of started out with a wish list of, you know, what we wanted. And the way that list evolved was kind of, you know, having an approach to the hobby where we just bought, you know, he had a ton of keyboards, I had a ton of keyboards. And it was more of a, you know, what do I really like about this? What do I really like about that? I think what's really cool and what really makes our partnership work in this is that I'm very much a use driven user in the hobby. I consider keyboards a tool, and given my profession, I type a lot. So a lot of the things I liked beyond my preferences for minimalistic design was usability, and that would be something I'd immediately notice with, you know, buying custom keyboards and things like that. You know, oh wow, this looks good, but this isn't very good to use, or this would be great if this was changed a little bit. And that's kind of that was kind of our approach. And I think you know, the biggest advice, you know, segueing into that to new designers would be, you know, don't get married to one thing or another, but prioritize. Don't get married to the minutia, but definitely, you know, if you're shooting for a very specific feature, you know, learn to scrap a design or a piece of a design if it doesn't meet your intended goal. I think it's really easy when it comes to product design to to fall down a rabbit hole, and kind of stray away from, you know, where your goal is. So
Yeah.
it's important
To be corporate scope creep, right?
not necessarily, I don't want to say corporate, but you know, there you have to, like, you know, it's one of those silly questions, but you have to ask yourself why you're doing something. And I think in a lot of hobbies and a lot of even large corporate product design, I think you have situations where a lot of times, you know, when you really boil down a feature or something like that, you get into these areas where things are different to be different, but there's no reason for them to be different.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's at the detriment of the finished product. And I think a lot of, I think that's a trap that a lot of designers, especially less seasoned ones, fall into.
Yeah. So I have kind of a follow up to this. You know, you spoke about keyboards in a more utilitarian sense of this is a tool that we use, you know, and that's why I wanted to do XYZ. Do you have some kind of a rubric or like decision making tree or thought process behind this is what I want in a keyboard? Now I also need to try and design for the people that are buying it. Can you speak to any kind of process that you go through for that?
I don't. I mean, it's not really essentially a process, right? Because the keyboard is quite a simple device. But I guess I can go to an example with the iron. The iron has an extremely low front height.
Mhm.
That was a bit of a challenge when designing, you know, something that is full gasket mounted and things like that. Obviously, it's hard to get all that in there and be low. You know, it impacts things like weight design, right? If our keyboard was 2 or 3 millimeters taller, it would weigh a lot more. We'd be able to fit more material, bigger weights, larger weights, in you know, all dimensions, things like that. So there definitely is trade-offs. You know, that the 7-degree typing angle and the 17 millimeter front height is a nice natural progression for a top desk keyboard placement with the way your wrists sit and everything. You really don't need a wrist rest, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
there are trade-offs, you know, to doing stuff like that and kind of fitting everything in. So that would be an example of where you kind of have to pick what's more important. Is that low front height important, or you're going more for weight and appearance and things
Yeah.
like that?
So it's so it's more of a feeling as opposed to like a hard, fast kind of set of rules.
Yeah, I you know,
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's not it's not terribly scientific or anything,
Yeah.
in that. I mean, I guess it is, but not. You know, I guess it's not. Um, what am I trying to say here? Yeah, it's a different
It's
set
not
of
a
parameters.
rigid process that you're going through.
Yeah, it's not a it's
Yeah.
definitely not a rigid process.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I've got some questions in chat that I kind of want to pivot to, and I'll direct the question at Luke first. What do you guys think of inspired designs? You know, I can think recently of two boards that essentially looked kind of identical to one another.
Okay.
So, what do you think of keyboards that are inspired by that happen to look almost exactly like
I
the
mean,
inspiration?
if you look at even the first board we made, it's inspired by a ton of different boards. So you could say the top right blocker or whatever came from a 910. Then the badge came from a Think 6.5. Then the gasket mount system kind of from Lewis's Volcano or Key Cult. And then the seamless design on the side from the Volcano. The back weight on the back from an M65 Alpha. All those kind of things really went into it, from the giant weight on the bottom from other boards. So I don't really so much mind it. I think there's a ton of gatekeeping, but man, there's so much demand for keyboards that I don't think it hurts one person or another. Now, if it's like straight rip off, like if somebody took an almost exact copy of our board, like they grabbed our STL render file and then dissected it and like, well, I'm going to change the badge to have my logo on it. Yeah, I'd probably have a bit of a problem with that.
Yeah.
But then again, that's never happened to me, so maybe my opinion changes, you know?
Yeah, that's
So,
fair.
I don't know. I feel like there's only so much you can do, although me and you have a great idea that we're going to be working on. So there's only so much you can
later.
do to a keyboard. So, I mean, it's all going to be kind of inspired on itself one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're talking about rectangles. You know, it's really
like a word.
I only can see the meme of yep, it's a TKL. Like that's all I can see, you know.
I mean, you know, think about how many TKLs look exactly the same.
Yeah.
I've been using mechanical keyboards for 2 decades now, and I have old gamer keyboards that, you know, it's the same injection molded plastic, the same TKL layout, you know, and nobody ever had a problem with that before. You know, basically the logo is the only thing that's different. They're probably all made in the same place, you know, as well. But yeah,
Very likely.
I think the gatekeeping is is definitely a little aggressive. You know, I would say to new designers, if you have something that you feel brings value to the market, or a different take on things, you know, go for it. You know, there's still so much open space, and as Luke said, the demand is definitely
so insane.
It outstrips supply, so it's not like anybody is really stepping on anyone's toes, essentially.
So I think this is a good kind of immediate like shift question is another one here in the chat, with the exception of things like Geist Machine, right? Like there, if you've been in the hobby for a long time, you're kind of seeing and feeling like things, like there are no new designs. Like, you know, you keep seeing the same thing over and over and over. Do you feel like there's been a fair amount of improvements, or have you felt like we designed this way because there is not, you know, something that we want? I don't know. That's kind of a nebulous question. So sorry, but I don't know. I'm just interested in your thoughts on where design is as a community.
If you look at probably the first, as we and Matt perceived it, like gasket mount keyboard or whatever, was pretty much like the Volcano in #1, and that just came out in a year and a half, 2 years ago. You know, so it's like, how quick of a cycle do we need to turn around different things for new technology that we put into it, or new designs? Shoot, you look at car manufacturing and every other manufacturing, they run on the same design for 4, 5, 6 years before then replacing it with something new. It's still, you know, got 4 wheels and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's how fast do we want to change it, the technology, the mounting systems, things like that. So we do have new stuff coming out, like the Lev Mag or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
They was working on things like that. So I do think there's a fair good amount of innovation into it, especially when it comes to like the aesthetics of everything. And I think that's kind of the part where, you know, Matt looks at a keyboard like it's a tool, and it is. It's, especially now work from home everywhere, it's like a portal to your job, to connecting with other people. I view it much more as a toy, so I want to have fun with a lot of design and things like that. Like, I want to get kind of zany and out there. And, you know, it's a luxury novelty that I'm fortunate enough that I can spend the money on design and enjoy them on. So I want to do some crazy stuff with it. And we'll get there. It's just all a matter of time.
Well, yeah. To Matt, I'll let you talk for a second. But, you know, to your point about the maglev board, like I forget the original one that did it, or at least started to prototype it. But there's one in Interest Check now. There's another one in Interest Check now. Like already, people are starting to take the ball and run with it, right? You know, there's the first, and then there's the improvements, and then there's, you know, bringing it up in terms of creating it efficiently and reproduction of that. So, anyways, Matt, any thoughts on state of the community design keyboard wise?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, as Luke said, you go back just a year and a half ago, and it was essentially all top mounts. And I think design was a bit more conservative as well. You know, now we're seeing a lot more more interesting designs. We're seeing more blockers. We're seeing, more badges. The maglev. We got leaf spring. Gaskets everywhere now. So I think as far as like a community, it seems like, you see some of these ideas, come out, and then you'll see one or two boards, and then the market kind of accepts it, and you see more of it. But you still see what I like to see is there's still some classic designs that still do very well, and I like to see that, because there was nothing wrong with top mount. It wasn't broken to begin with. So I do like to see that there are still some classic takes and things like that that still show up in the community.
Okay.
I think it's more of a, there's always room for innovation, but it doesn't mean that the things that came before it, the designs, the mechanisms, are broken in any way. So I still think, and going back to demand versus supply, I think as long as you have a solidly engineered board that is aesthetically pleasing, I think that the market and the hobby will support it.
Nice.
There's definitely room for the zany, crazy designs. I, with Smith+Rune, I'm definitely more of the I guess I would say conservative.
If Luke likes the color red, or I don't know, chartreuse, you like whites and blacks and grays.
Plum. I
Okay.
like plum.
Fine.
I like plum.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't resist a bit of a shot.
It's a good duality with Luke and I, because we have such very, very different tastes, and our design processes are quite long, and there's a lot of revision and going back and forth, but
Yeah.
I think we land on some good stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope.
No, I agree. I like it personally. So that actually, so let's shift a little bit. I'm curious. You've got a design. Talk me through prototyping. Like, all right, you've got a design. I've got a step file. What the hell do I do now? Like, if I'm someone trying to get into this, what do I do? Luke, you got thoughts? 3D printing of prototypes has become more popular now. Do I need a prototype before I go to group buy? What are your thoughts on that process, and how do I do it?
I would say for new designers, you definitely need a prototype before going to group buy. You want to show that you can at least source all the parts needed to make this thing happen. As far as 3D printing goes, I mean, it's a quick way to get something, but 3D printing shrinks like 2% or so, So it's like you design a keyboard to meet a certain tolerance. You just upscale everything 2% and hope that it shrinks down to where the final board's actually going to be. What really are you checking there? I mean, some of the minutia things for running a board, will be the tolerances in machining. So, 3D printing will spot the difference in 0.1 versus 0.25 millimeters of a gap that you designed around, or something like that. So I would say, do your best to visualize when you're designing it how a CNC like mill is going to come in and drill this thing out. Don't make impossible hard to come in at an angle or something weird, or an inside channel that it's like, how's that going to be milled out? Try to think of, if I were to come down with like a pencil, how am I going to draw this and come out with it? I think that's the biggest thing. So like with our manufacturer before, they tried making keycaps and they said that they couldn't. So we revisited the idea with him on a Iron 180. So I actually took Heine's AutoCAD it was a SolidWorks file for his.
Shout out to Heine.
Shout out to Heine for that. And then modified it to take away a lot of the inside curves and surfaces, and change the wall thicknesses, change the stem design of it for their tiny machining and things like that, and send it to him, and went back and forth a few times with, hey, we can do this, we can't do that, to make it the most machinable as possible. when we first designed our keyboard, a lot of those machine tolerances and stuff I had in there, but I didn't take some things into mind, like they couldn't machine a 0.75 millimeter radius for the corners of the inside of the keyboard of the bezel for where keycaps went, because I had a really tight gap of 0.75 between the keycap and the bezel spacing, and I had the corners at the same radius. And they came back and they're like, no, the most we can do is 1.5 millimeter for those deep cuts. So I think it's a lot of it's learning that kind of stuff, the little nuances of what can actually be machined. And if you guys have a good manufacturer, they'll review it. They'll come back and forth with engineering recommendations, tell you what they can and can't do, and then you can go back and change things. Another example was we originally were going to use M3 screws, and our sidewall was like 3/4 of a millimeter or so thick, where the screw head was, the socket head cap was, and they said, no, that's too thin for us to machine. We don't feel comfortable doing it. We can do it, but we don't want to ruin anything. So we actually switched to M2.5 screws because of that reason, just to give us more sidewall thickness. So I didn't have to redesign the whole board. So it's just knowing little things like that, I think, really that will get you along the way. And a good manufacturer will walk through those with you to tell you their capabilities.
Yeah, I think what Luke just said is the most important part about that. If you contact a manufacturer and your quote is cheap and they don't provide any feedback on your design, to me that would be a red flag. When a manufacturer comes back and gives suggestions and will talk about their capabilities and what they feel comfortable reliably and repeatably doing, that's always a good sign. It's actually a sign of a better manufacturer, not necessarily a worse manufacturer. And that kind of goes back to designing as well. It's being defensive in your design, making things more machinable, making things more repeatable is only going to ensure a better run. And I also think when it comes, it also depends. It's always good to have an end goal in mind too. Are you making this board just for you? Is there going to be any group buy? Is this just for 5 or 10 friends, or is this something where you're going to make 100? And I think that will, or more, that will also guide you in how many prototypes you need to make. Do you need to get one of every color? How many colored chips? How many bases? How many tops? How many other little pieces do you need to really prove that you can do it? And I think with 165, that was really tough. That was a tough thing. How many rounds of prototyping? How many do we do? Did we need to do, what did we do, Luke? 7 prototypes, 8 prototypes total? Was that too much? Was that too little? So maybe we overestimated, but I guess when you're running a lot of boards, that's not a bad thing to do. Yeah.
So a couple of thoughts on that. One, I think, if we're continuing the thread of recommendations for anyone trying to design a keyboard or going through that process, one, be open to change. Like, don't be too rigid on some things like that. Well, I really had envisioned this radius being a 0.75. Well, we can't do it. So like without potentially ruining the thing, like be flexible there. And then number 2, Keep Noob asks a good question here of like, before I put cart before horse. How do you find a menu? And don't, try not to give up who you're using if you don't want to, obviously. But like, do you just Google it? Like Luke, you made the joke. Like I just Googled like CNC manufacturers. Is that what did you do? How do you find one?
We got recommended from other designers and people that have ran group buys who they've used. So we had chosen one of those. But I mean, you can go on like Alibaba or something like that and just Google search the manufacturers and email them with, a step file and say, hey, how much is this if I wanted to do quantity 10, quantity 100? How much is a prototype? Things like that. and you'll get prices that vary all over. I mean, you can get some that are really, really competitive, some that are, you know, a couple $1,000s, and you're just like, what the heck? So, I mean, there's multiple ways to go about it, being either recommendations or just doing some research yourself. So, like, for example, we are going to be prototyping some carbon fiber plates for some forged carbon and stuff like that. So it's like, it's somebody new to me. So, you know, I emailed them and said, hey, I emailed them and said, hey, can you tell me how much, you know, quantity 100 of these would be, how much quantity 500 would be, and I want to order 10 prototypes. Here's the step file. Can you make this? And they came back and said, yeah, you know, here's what we can do. So, you know, sometimes just going out there and taking a risk too. And if the pricing doesn't look like it can justify what the market will demand, try someplace else.
What about I seem to remember that an Eastern European vendor was in play the first round that helped with some good back and forth. What are your thoughts on, you know, being able to use manufacturers that aren't exclusively just China all the time? You know, is that something that you're seeking out? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so when we started with 165, we were not planning on using China manufacturers. And I have a bit of a background where I moved away from software engineering and did some supply chain stuff. And that kind of led back to China when I was with another company as well. Kind of the same experience. You know, there aren't, you know, you can't quantify standards of manufacturing by country alone. Every country has good manufacturers and bad manufacturers. And you know, Luke and I started, we really wanted to manufacture in the US, and we really looked at places in Europe and things like that. And what it comes down to is it really comes down to, you know, just quality expectations and cost. You know, as far as like the manufacturer we use, as far as China is concerned, is very expensive. But you know, you're going to pay for high quality work. And then just piggybacking before about, yes, how do you find a manufacturer? It really is just Google or searching, you know, sites where, you know, that are basically catalogs of manufacturers. That's really what it is.
Yeah. And I think a big part of it too is customer service too. It's like when we were engaging with one of my friends' shops that's in Jacksonville for CNC, because he has a vertical end mill. And they were even getting creative with how they were going to try to do it. They're like, well, maybe we could water jet cut the center out of it first to the predominant shape for the top piece, save, you know, 90% of the machining time, things like that. But I think just a timely cadence with these people when they say they're going to get back to you in 5 days and then you don't hear from them for 3 weeks, you have to think, is this somebody I want to work with? You know, versus the manufacturer we ended up going with. We gone back and forth a few times, and they spoke really good English in China. But when we finally approved the design, they're like, okay, we'll get you an RFQ. And I was like, oh, when should I expect it? And they're like, oh, you'll have it when you like wake up in the morning. You know, like it was that fast.
Yeah.
So
thank you for sharing all of this, by the way. I think that this is enlightening for a lot of folks that are interested in that. You know, I'm quoted as saying keycaps are the easy part and keyboards, that's where the you know, the real geniuses play. So I mean, it's ratcheted up to a whole nother level where you're able to design and produce a keyboard. So I guess maybe I can ask the question of what's in the future. Like what do you expect to see hobby wise as a trend? What's the future of Smith+Rune? You know, are you guys going to buy a big CNC machine? You know, what is future thoughts for you, hobby and individually?
I mean, you know, when we started, it was we thought maybe we'd sell 20 boards. You know, it was a passion project. You know, and obviously we sold a lot more than 20 boards, and
Yep.
you know, I guess there's a point where everybody has to decide, is this becoming a business? Is this more of, is it, there's a trade-off, right? So you have to start thinking about it differently. We're on our second group buy, and we have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of cool things that we want to do. But at this point, there's definitely some boring business stuff that has to be, considered going forward. But I think Luke and I have always been on the same page, and what kind of drives it is we really want everybody who wants one of our boards to have one. So we will continue to scale and do what we need to do and do all the boring business things, to get to that point. And hopefully, people continue to support us and, allow us to grow and maybe do this, as our full-time jobs eventually, because this is way more fulfilling and satisfying and fun.
So before you talk about the future, I want to be able to make sure that we relay the anecdote of why Smith+Rune began, why the Soup 65 became a thing. Because Vox, if I remember correctly, you were frustrated that you lost on a first come first serve for a volcano. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I tend to start designing things for every hobby I'm in, but I didn't take it seriously until I got crushed in the volcano group buy. Yeah.
So yes. So I guess I can say thanks, Lewis, for at least my currently favorite board. So thank you for that. Luke, what are your thoughts on the hobby moving forward? Are you going to have a CNC machine in your bedroom anytime soon?
Potentially.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's got to be a solid 12 by 12 rooms. So I'm gonna have to put my bed on top of it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but all that rocking, it would throw off the tolerances, right?
Yeah. I got a good purple bed. It absorbs a lot. So.
Okay, good.
Like making this keyboard has probably been like the pinnacle of everything career-wise I've done in my life. So more so than getting my degree, more so than the jobs I've worked for the past decade or anything like that. Like the most satisfying thing was taking something from thought and making it into something somebody wants that you can then sell and put on their desk, like a tangible object. Like as a mechanical engineer, that's just amazing. So I don't want to stop anytime soon. However, when we first started, and I was looking at some of the questions you were going to ask, like, how stressful is a group buy? Any recommendations? Like, it's super stressful. Like the first interest check we posted on Reddit, how much shit we got for it, especially when we announced pricing and stuff like that. You're just like, why am I even doing this? I'm trying to make something cool for people to have. If I could do it all over again, I would just sell 30 of them privately to my friends. But ultimately, that's not what's going to grow the community. And then I don't want people to see it online and be like, where'd you get that from? Why didn't you make more? Things like that. So it's like, you just got to wear a thick skin for it. And you got to take the criticism, the good with the bad. Hopefully you can try to convince people that, hey, this is why this costs so much money, because, it's a seamless case. It uses twice the machining, it uses twice the materials, and all these other things. You can try to justify it best as you can, but ultimately you just, treat people like Chick-fil-A treats you, is what I say.
Where they say my pleasure?
Yes, my pleasure. So, you take that good with the bad, and it is tough, and you do get a lot of criticism for it. And it's, who are you to say that you're going to charge this much for it? You have a FE that costs $885. Why? Well, it's made with stainless steel and copper. Oh, it was made with stainless steel? Did you even read the interest check?
Yeah.
You just you pick out certain things and just blast people on it without even knowing the details of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is the really hard part.
I don't necessarily want to get into the conversation about flipping and aftermarket because I feel like that's been done to death. But it has to feel wild for you to bring something from thought to concept to actually having it sold and then to see it be traded or sold for things that are aftermarket valued at $3,000 or even $4,000 for this thing. Like, how did, like, does that cause anxiety for you? Are you like what are your feelings on that? That's just can't be something that I could handle, I don't think.
For me, it causes anxiety in the fact that I need to make more keyboards faster to try to cool this. Did we sell it high enough in price? I didn't want to do a Vickery, the very first keyboard we made, because, you know, I didn't want to be presumptuous. Like, oh, look at how successful we're going to be. Here's going to be some Vickery units, you know, things like that. Like, I wanted to go into, let's prove that we can do one and do it right. And then go from there. And I think a big portion of it too is just community engagement and feedback. You have some of these keyboards, you know, that are really, really nice out there that don't sell for as much in the aftermarket, but then you look at the support that they got and the communication and updates they got along the way, and it's crap. So it's just like, I feel like some of the hype from them died down. Like, oh, that keyboard that such and such made that, you know, they didn't talk about or support, or I didn't hear an update for 4 months on. You know, it fizzles out and goes down. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, not all keyboards are viewed that way. And it really comes down to, I think, the hard work and effort that the designers put in for community engagement, support after the fact, and things like that. Like, some of my best friends are keyboard friends. So, yeah, it's been cool making an awesome board, but, you know, it's fun meeting all of you guys too.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's certainly flattering to see that. The boards sell for that, and, like, you know, Mech Madness, you know, being the top 65, you know, that's definitely flattering. It's validating, you know, that the design is that popular, but really what it means is that we were not able to make enough, and we need to make more. So that's really the driving behind everything is we, and you know, it's hard, right? Because we thought we might have made too many the first round because we were new. We had a few hundred people in the Discord, you know, and now it's kind of, you know, back to what you were saying about group buys being stressful. We're making, to us anyway, a huge amount of Iron 180s, and you know, there's always that fear that, you know, maybe it's too much. Is it still too little? You know, it's, on you know, flip side of things too, you know, you're responsible to a lot of people. You know, we're talking about a worldwide fulfillment. You know, a lot of money. So it's incredibly stressful. So while it's fun, the other side of it is, and you know, to new designers out there, when it starts, when your design, you know, comes to fruition and is going to go to group buy and things like that, you know, you're essentially signing a contract with lots and lots of people, to fulfill, and there's a lot of, you know, a lot of money involved, a lot of responsibility involved, on that end. So I don't want to get off tangent too much, but there is that side of it, and making sure to, even though it's fun and it's a hobby, making sure to take those side of things seriously. You know, understanding that when coming to customer service and whatnot, you know, is just going to make everything go better along the way.
Yeah, and to be candid, like, as a buyer, I would rather hear frequent updates that say still no updates or still in production or delay, as opposed to just being ghosted, because that sucks so hard. Like, so even though it's disheartening to hear or see a message that says, guys, I got nothing right now, I would rather have that, knowing that I have access to the group buy runners. So I think I speak for a few amount of people that are like, thank God you do that, and I would like to see that more frequently. So, you know, we kind of had planned to switch to a little bit of a Q&A now, and I know you guys have busy days planned and, you know, things happening. So I don't want to keep you too long. Do you have any more thoughts or pieces of or nuggets of wisdom that you want to share with anyone. I won't say anything, but I believe there might be some news happening soon from Smith+Rune. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that is a bit of an accurate statement.
Okay.
But I guess I'll start with you know, and I know we've mentioned it throughout this interview. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why this is so enjoyable is because of the community. It's a welcoming community that anybody can get into, and it goes beyond just the keyboard. It's really about the people, and it especially during these times where everyone is isolated and there's not a lot of human interaction. On a personal level, this community alone, I think, has really kept me sane through all this. And that's the community is definitely the driving factor for me on why I want to be doing this over other things. It's extremely rewarding, and yeah, I'll shoot it over to Luke.
No, I got nothing else to add.
Except that smile. Can we get one last flex from the arguably the swollest of swole in the community? Look at that. That's just ridiculous, isn't it? That's just too much. He's literally bench pressing irons. That's where that comes from. He doesn't even go to the gym, guys. That's literally just iron 180s.
We're gonna get Key Colts mod Koi jacked too, because he's starting to go with the gym to me every day during lunch.
Oh no. Poor Koi. How does he feel?
He can't bend his arms right now. They're too
Attaboy. Hey, pepperoni pizza. Thanks very much. All right. I'm going to let you guys go. You're more than welcome to stay on if you want to answer questions that come in through the chat or wherever. But, no pressure one way or the other. I do want to say thank you again for being open to chatting and sharing insights. I'm going to link an invite to your Discord in the Twitch channel chat. So drop on in if you're really into audio. Matt might be one of the biggest audiophiles in the community. They have Smith+Rune audio friends, and they like to convince people to spend a lot of money. So it's a lovely community. I haven't seen much toxicity there ever, literally. So come hang out. So thank you guys, and I don't know, Eric, if you're still around, we'll bring you back. Let's see if I can't get Theremin Goat in here, and we'll start answering some questions.
Is it okay if I drop a quick leak?
Yeah, man, you're good. Oh, we're doing leaks now?
Not really a leak. So if you're wondering what happened with the remaining FEs and PCs, stay tuned in the Discord for an announcement tonight.
So there's extra Founders Edition keyboards and polycarb is what you're telling me right now.
A handful. Not less than a handful, but a few.
Several.
A few.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's big news for a lot of folks. That's exciting. Thank you for the leaks.
Pretty big news. Hopefully, I'm sure people are excited after hearing that, because the polycarb, not a very large number of polycarbs were made. So
least amount. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing less than polycarbs were probably the number of prototypes.
Actually, that is accurate, I think.
Yeah.
I should probably tell folks where to post their questions. Beginner chat if they have them.
I can hang on for probably another 10 minutes or so if it's any
Oh, that's great.
Questions
that's
or anything like that.
Oh, the giveaway command is wrong. Next on deck. Sorry, I don't have cables for you. To test it would be great to test out the raffle system. Are you talking about Canon Keys raffle on that one? Okay. Hey, let's welcome back Theremin Goat. So for those of you that don't know, Theremin Goat here, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I'm going to share your blog site here.
Well, I think you kind of have already given me some great introduction advice. You'd said it a little bit earlier that that you like to think that keycaps are easy and keyboards are where the geniuses play. Then I'm pretty sure that just makes me the insane one out of all of you guys. I'm Theremin Goat. I've been around in the hobby for close to 3 years, but over the course of the last about year and a half to 2 years now, I've been a Switch collector, and that has morphed itself into my website, which is literally just myname.com. And I have been writing reviews, long-winded history articles, everything you'd want to know about Switches for entirely too long right now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I know that you do some extremely in-depth work, and many people appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for that. I want to answer this question earlier. So in Mechs on Deck, in the actual stream chat, there's a question specifically about the raffle system that Cannon Keys uses. And so unfortunately, and this is good for as a whole, right? So there are vendors that are doing they're taking a lot of steps to combat against bots. So essentially a computer program that's trying to buy out the thing very quickly so that they can resell it at a marked up price or flip it, right? Is kind of how, for any of you that are beginners, that's what we're talking about here. So to explain how the Cannon Keys checkout works and that how all of that, we literally have no visibility to that intentionally so that someone couldn't write a bot to game that system. So as much as I would like to explain, what happened with, AIO3's board today on Cannon Keys, I have literally no idea about that. So I guess maybe that's an interesting question for you, Matt and Luke, on, if you were to ever have your own site, and sell and try a group buy through that. I know that you sell apparel and things. Are you doing anything or thinking through the process of what happens if we have to combat a bot? Are those questions that you already have? And Matt, maybe this is more for you because you're literally a software engineer. Are those conversations that you're already having?
Yeah, absolutely. When it gets to the point where, we're holding sales like that on our site, it's definitely going to have to be some type of custom implementation to handle bots. So it's definitely something that's very much on my mind, and it's definitely something that we effectively want to kill. It's one thing. It's one thing to use a bot to guarantee a personal board because you're slow with first come first serve. Not advocating bots at all, but we saw some of this before where it wasn't too much of a problem. But the 165 extra sale on Cannon Keys, where they had the sticker was there to catch bots, the cute dog sticker. And people were buying 5 of those, 6, 7. That I think that just kind of illuminated where there is an issue, especially with the in-stock sales. And it's when we start seeing kind of the sneaker game come over into keyboards, I think that's really where we have to look and say, hey, we have a problem, and come up with solutions for it. The unfortunate side of things is when you're talking about low quantities, it's really easy to do a raffle system and then just create invoices from your store to winners. But when you're talking about large amounts of quantity, it becomes very, very hard to efficiently run raffles and things like that. So I really don't have an answer to the problem, but I think Cannon Keys is moving in the right direction, and is kind of taking the reins on this. So I really hope that this new system is a good system, and everything's worked out.
Yeah, and just to put a cap on this conversation before we shift to other things, Healthy Tofu has mentioned that even one guy was able to get 4 Andromedas today. So like even Cannon Keys' system having completely opaque visibility to how it works, people are able to, try and get 4 of those 100 only unit boards, and maybe there's some back end IP tracing that they'll go through. I don't know, but it's just a problem when you have limited runs like that. So, okay, just kidding. The guy was trolling, I guess. So, moving on. Anyways, so that's good. I appreciate that. Hi, thank you for coming back, Chewy. How are you? And Eric, hello.
Hola.
I'm doing well, man. Did you guys get any questions while we were having a chat about keyboards here?
Not that I really saw, but
I someone did talk about it, but someone asked, do distributors really care about bots? And Rhaegar TTV, I think how you would say that. Put it perfectly. Vendors are enthusiasts too, and I think that's an important part about this hobby right now. Is that the people who are the vendors are people who came from keyboards and started with a love of keyboards. They're not just in it for money. So that's why they are taking these steps in order to make sure that everyone who wants one can get one or has the best opportunity to get a board, a keycap set, switches, whatever, because they realistically they don't have to, right? Like everyone knows that they could be in full, money mode and sell everything out in 2 seconds and have one guy buy like 20 keyboards and not really care. But they love this community and they want to see it succeed and they want people to enjoy the products that they create, which I think is unique to this hobby and is maybe not the same in a lot of other hobbies that could seem similar.
So, go ahead.
I was just saying to kind of like piggyback off of that, as someone, especially among a lot of the people who are more outspoken in this community and designers. I mean, I'm still fairly new. A lot of these people, the bigger names, if you will, 5, 6, 7 years in. And the one thing I can say from a beginner's perspective is that, especially now when we haven't had meetups because of coronavirus, a lot of people who are newer to the hobby, the first thing that they're caught with is the price of everything, right? They always, wow, this is so expensive. And as we see more of these smaller vendors begin to start up, especially over recently, people tend to think that it's about the money or that the money is where it's at in this hobby. And it's really interesting that as time goes on, and I've seen this with other people who joined, the same time as me, roughly after me. So the further along that you get in this hobby, it becomes more about the people, more so now than when I started. Now, I mean, I'll be more inclined to buy a keyboard or a keycap set because it's, my friend who made it or someone who I care about more so than the fact that it's just the, next new big thing that could resell later. So I think that's a big thing that beginners don't quite recognize until they're far enough in that they're no longer a beginner per se.
But I think too, we as people just kind of get stuck in this idea that, well, they're a vendor, so they care about money. They can hold 2 things in their head at the same time and this be their business, but also actually care about their customer base. And those aren't that they're not like this kind of binary situation of they're either all about money or they actually care about the people. Like, and I'm sure some vendors come across as one or the other, but the overwhelming majority are definitely both, right? So I don't think it's necessarily fair for us to assume one way or the other without knowing that.
Yeah, I mean, logic would state that if you are a vendor, to remain a vendor, you have to stay profitable.
Yeah, of course.
But just using Canon keys as the example with the anti-bot queue system, Andrew didn't have to develop that or put all the time into it to do it. And if you're talking about something directly for the community, having a queue system like that, he can only sell as many products as he has to sell. Having the queue system doesn't bring him any more money. It is essentially a $0 free system to develop that is strictly for the benefit of his customers. Because whether he let bots gobble up his whole stock or whether he did it in some other way, it doesn't. At the end of the day, the amount of things that sell are the same. But that queue system is directly a service, and I think actions like that really just show how great this community is. because people care about the community, and that is different. That is that is different than what's going on in other communities, where the people that are servicing the community are also part of the community. And I think I know our community is growing like crazy, but we're still at that point, and that's one of the things that I hope we can preserve, the human element, as we get larger and larger.
Yeah, that's always my fear, right? Is that some really large company will come in and just like gobble up or like make a huge, maybe statement into the community. Um, we've started to see that a little bit, but not quite as aggressive as I would fear. Um, but I hope that that people will continue to support the vendors and the creators that are, hobbyists and love the community and do it for the love of the community rather than just trying to, you know, gobble up market share, making it more business than like love of keyboards.
Yeah. So I guess I have two thoughts because I wanna ask Chewy a question, I wanna ask Goat a question. So Chewy is kind of more into artisans than I am. So I wanna understand perspective here, or maybe give some insight into how is the Canon Keys raffle system, and how does that feel different than just taking an L on a raffle for an artisan? Like for me in my brain, it's bye Luke, or if you have to go, thank you for joining us. I love you. If I have to do this to get an artisan and I don't really like say, I don't see people like constantly being upset about, oh, I couldn't get this freaking artisan and being pissed off about that. When sometimes you're talking about quantities of 10. I do see some pretty toxic responses to got screwed by Canon Keys' system today. Like in my brain, they're the same. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll give you both.
This question is to everyone as well.
Yeah,
So.
I'll give you both sides to that. So there are the people that you take your L's with some dignity. When you lose an artisan because there's only 10 or 15 or whatever, flipping is still a big problem, but you don't see it as much when it comes to the whole flipping problem. You don't see it, like, it's not as public. It's not posted all over Mech Market. It's usually posted in groups, or it's a little bit more subdued. You just don't see it as much. And also artisans, I feel like they're not beginner things, and we're seeing a lot of aggression towards these beginner boards, or the boards that are, the Iron 165s, the Bowers of the world, where people are, you're able to spend X amount of money and then get 5X that money. Where, yeah, artisans, you could probably do that, but there are a lot of artisans, and that's such a niche thing that not everybody likes artisans, but everybody likes boards, right? Everybody likes keyboard. You got to have a keyboard to type on at some point. So I think there's that, but then on the other hand, are you justified in getting mad? You can be upset for whatever you want, right? You have the right to be upset. You don't have the right to send death threats. You don't have the right to lash out at other people. You can sit there and be angry about not getting what you wanted. Like I'm sure everyone here at some point has not gotten something that they wanted, or not gotten something that they wanted at the price. You can be angry about that. Just don't direct your anger towards something that's not your problem. And are bots a problem? I'm sure. I'm totally sure, but it will happen. You'll get something that you'll like. It's the impatience, and we've talked about this before, but the community that has come in the last year has not had to have been as patient as the rest of us. Because when you come in and you're like, oh, these boards are delivering, it's like, yeah, a lot of those people have been waiting for that board for like 10 months to 2 years.
Hype abused.
So
also, welcome,
Is it
Jay.
5 or 6 years?
Yes.
Hey,
yeah.
guys.
Welcome,
Hey.
Jay. So hello, everyone. This is Jay. He's half of Top Clack. So I said, come join us. Let's talk about questions. But I think Jeff Leopard brings up a good point. Maybe I'm just not seeing as salty as people get on artisans. Either way, people are sad they don't win their things. It's just, for me, it seems like a 1-to-1, and I see a lot more toxicity come from boards than I do from artisans personally. So that was my
you've
perspective
clearly
on
not
it.
seen it when I've missed out on a raffle then, because I get really, really bad.
I have yet to win a bongo cat, and I
just
can't sleep at night. Like,
Well, the other piece
what
is
the hell?
the other piece is that there's going to be another bongo cat running at some point in the near future, right? If I miss out on a keyboard, there's not a 100% chance that it'll run again, right? It's a maybe. Whereas with a lot of artisans, if it's a sculpt that they make consistently, it's not like they're gonna, completely stop doing it. And if they do, they typically run it again and then let you know they're gonna stop doing it. So,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more artisans running. Like you can be into like 15 different artisan raffles in a week. Whereas with keyboards, it's a little bit
Oh, that's
less.
a good perspective too. So
I'm going to interject real quick. I got to jump
Bye, Matt.
off.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks everyone for coming out and listening to Luke and I babble. And
we much
thanks,
appreciate
guys,
it
for
very, very much.
Having this and all the good stuff. So
Thank you very
enjoy
much.
your weekend, everyone.
So while we're on the topic of things that sell out quickly, but maybe are less traditionally raffle, I have kind of a stupid question. I'll throw this to the person that has looked at more switches in depth than I think anyone. If so many switches are so similar, people get super upset about losing out on, say, tangerines, or creams are sold out now, or inks. Like if they're all so similar, like why are we getting so upset? Maybe you, as the switch expert, could elaborate a little bit on that.
I mean, so that's an interesting question, right? So to an extent, in terms of their performance in keyboards, a lot of switches that are released now are just pretty similar, right? Like you could say that your performance from basically any linear switch you're going to get from, like, say, Duroc and JWK are going to be, 90th percentile at least, right? And I think the real problem is that, twofold problem is that, one, people don't necessarily see where the differences lie, partly because there's not enough, I think, focus from the community on where the minute differences that you may see in switches. But at the same time, I think people get frustrated with not getting in on things that are like C3 tangerines, you say, for example, because they're hyped. To TKC's credit, I mean, they've marketed those things into the ground and they've done it, extremely well. And now it's to a point where people just automatically assume that those are among the best JWK switches without actually exploring out there or realizing that, hey, you can get something that's 90% similar that's just stock from China. I mean, sure, maybe you have to wait for it to ship for a month, but it's pretty much the hype for it. And I think that hype is what's driving a lot of these, recolors. And I say that with air quotes, even though I'm not on camera.
But alpacas are so much better than mauves.
So
ones are just top of the pack, Chewy.
So I want to ask Jay a question, especially from vendor perspective. But before I do, I don't often have the Switch God in my presence, so I have to ask, what switch is the best and why should I use it? Because no one's ever asked you that ever before, right?
Oh, I mean, they asked me it. I don't think they've asked me it in the last 10 minutes. If that's what you're curious about.
Well, I'm glad I could reset that counter.
I jokingly said it on some other server the other night that if I had a job that was just resetting the timer for when the last time I was asked that question, it would be a full-time job. So I appreciate the question, but I'm going to have to defer to the good old word preference.
Okay,
is the answer to that.
So the person that knows arguably more about the interior of switches and brands and minutia between them than anyone in the community, arguably, what is your preference then?
Ooh, I mean, if you have to, really push me into that corner and ask me for,
I'm gonna. We're not leaving off of you until you answer that question.
Why don't we just go around and say, instead of like, so I think the better question is, and we can all answer this.
Damn it, Chewy. I was trying to put him on the spot.
I know. Well, I'm saving him. I'm his life raft.
That's
not your favorite switch, But it's kind of that, if you had one board, if you got put in a room where you have to, be there, and this is the one keyboard and the one switch that you have to do for long-term use, what would it be? Not necessarily your favorite, because my favorite switch is different from the board I would be more okay, the switch I would be more okay stuck with.
Sure. That's a great question. To kind of answer both of those, I have like categories within switches that I like. So with linears, I tend to prefer either extremely light or extremely heavy linears. So things like TTC Gold Pinks, for example, being on the extremely light end, and stuff with just like 89, 90 plus gram springs, I think are interesting. Tactile switches. I'm not necessarily into this whole hyper tactility game. Everyone wants to race to snap their fingers on the next tactile switch out there, and I'm not about that. I'm not saying I'm an MX Brown lover, but there is a mid ground in terms of tactility between those. With clickies, who actually uses clickies? It's a great question.
Unless they're Alps Blues, I'm not into them, to be honest.
But if I had to use a keyboard with one for a long time and not necessarily be my favorite, I probably would choose something more of like collector's value, or at least historically are interesting to me. So like things like the original, and I mean the very original KVD fans T1 clears, or something like original Invir Holy Pandas, things like that have more of a, I mean, while I may not prefer necessarily using them, I think that people focus a lot on, oh, I want to get these interesting keycaps that have this color and story, or these artisans that are made by my best buddy and all this. And people don't like think about the switches that they put into a board. And as a collector, I'm hyper aware, at least, of the history behind some of my stuff. And I really like to keep that in heart. And that's why I still use some super old switches and boards that, I mean, are objectively not anywhere near as good as what you could get now, but they have a historical context that I appreciate more than anything.
Nice.
So Lang, what tell us your favorite, and then the one that you would be okay stuck with for a year.
So I'm a self-professed linear queen. So for me, really, I don't think I could identify a favorite. One that I would use the most, I like to use the Novel Keys 98 gram springs in like a cream housing, or that with an Oompa Loompa stem, the ultra high molecular weight polyethylene stems, for an extra smooth experience. Right now that I think I could use this board and these switches for a really long time. I've personally cleaned, tooled, lubed vintage blacks in this E85 I just built, and it's pretty incredible. So they're a little lighter than the 98 grams, obviously, but I think they're pretty fantastic.
And Jay?
Oh man, this is so tough. Like, if I was going to pick a favorite switch of all time, Brown Alps, but that's probably not attainable.
They're pretty damn high on my list too. I gotta add that.
They're hard to find, and they're expensive. So there's probably two realistic answers to give to this. The first one is, if I could have just a standard board daily to think about, it would be a high weighted ink. So usually with the spring swaps, something above 80 grams. But then there's the budget answer as well. If I was just looking for a switch that was good budget, Gateron Black with a milky top, man, for the price you just can't beat them. 15 cents or whatever they are, they're just so good for that price.
They're solid.
Now I want to jump in there, not to just like run over Jay or anything like that, but you say Alps Browns, man, but which ones are we talking about here?
It's KCM, I think it is.
The tactile ones?
Complicated tactile, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
And Osiris?
So favorite switch is going to be Zycos, right? It's the Chewy creation. If for those in chat who are not familiar with that, it's a like a Zelio V2, or basically Zeal V2 bottom, Panda top with a there's Chewy showing one off. It's got I use them with 78 grams. I know the originals were used with 78 gram springs. Halo clear, or Halo why am I forgetting the name? True or clear stems. They're very tactile. It goes against what Theremin Goat said with the race for the most tactility, but they are extremely tactile, but they are very much not the switch that I would want to use forever. They do have kind of an upkeep. They are a little bit difficult to deal with. They can explode.
Just a little bit.
Literally just sitting on the board. Sometimes you'll see
Yeah.
a keycap fly up and you're like, oh, it just blew up.
Just make more than you need.
Yeah, they
also give you a blister on your thumb when you're trying to push them into a tight plate as well, man.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they're notoriously hard to put in certain plates, just like the Holy Panda, because it is a Franken switch, and it's got problems with fitting into certain plates. To answer the question for the Switch I would probably use forever, I think I would go with a similar answer to Theremin Goat, which would be the Lilacs. So it's very similar to the T1. I think that's a great medium. It's not a super tactile switch. It's kind of in the middle. So you don't have quite a linear feel, but you don't have quite something as crazy as a Zyko or a Zeal V2 or a Holy Panda. The weighting of them stock is pretty nice. If you can lube and film them, which I'm assuming we're allowed to in this scenario, they feel much and sound much better than they do stock. I think that's just a good switch. You're not going to have issues putting it in plates. And it's just easy to use. It's not a crazy expensive switch. They can be kind of hard to find those like T1 variants, but once you get your hands on them, they're pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Chewy?
Yeah, mine. So Zykos are hands down my favorite, but they're honestly, even just after a few days of typing on them, it's like, oh God, okay, I don't know if I need this much bump all day, every day, because it's a shelf. But mine would be Holy Jesus, somewhere between 74 and 78 gram, because my 78 gram springs that I put in there initially are super worn out, which I love, but I don't think they're quite 78 grams anymore. But if I had to make them from scratch, it would be 74 grams from Novel Keys. I think like 74 gram springs and Holy Pandas are just like oof, because it's got that heavy feel, but still has quite the bump. Just because I've been using Holy Pandas since the second the Holy Jesus got announced. I was like getting on it the second it goes in. Obviously, this was back before Holy Pandas exploded. But yeah, it would be that. My camera is just not wanting to.
It wants to focus on the actual Chewy in the background.
Yeah, right.
That's what it's keeping focus on. It's amazing.
Just sit here like casually, it's off to the side. But yeah, Holy Panda 74 to 78 gram springs, 3204. I've never had like fatigue on typing on that. I've definitely had fatigue typing on my 98 gram linears after 6 hours of playing Call of Duty or something. I'm like, okay, my hands are starting to hurt. Or no, Drunken Wrestlers. That one will literally ruin your fingers.
Oh yeah, oh my God, that game. We should play. We haven't played in a while.
We haven't played in a hot minute.
So I thank you for making it more than me just backing Goat into a corner. But Jay, so we were talking kind of just before you joined about like vendors and how they're enthusiasts and they're trying to straddle that line of being viable as a business, but also being an enthusiast. And I want to ask you a very pointed question with all that in your brain. How do you feel about meme sets or meme keyboards like that are so meta that they might actually hit MOQ, but almost nobody actually wants? Like, what are your thoughts on this trend that's happening?
This is, man, you're right. You're putting me on a spot here. So there's a couple of considerations for this, and I'm going to try and play a little bit devil's advocate with it. If people are going to buy it, it doesn't matter if it's a meme set. It doesn't matter if it's a meme item, right? If people are going to buy it, they want it. People aren't going to spend a huge chunk of money. Like, let's face it, GMK keycaps, for example, aren't cheap. A custom keyboard isn't cheap compared to things you can get elsewhere. So if people are really, really going to spend a good chunk of money on something comparatively, then it must mean they like it more than just the fact that it's a meme. So I kind of don't have a problem with it personally. I still think there's a load of stuff that I personally dislike that runs. I think there was that Nut Cook Oof set. Like, personally, I don't get it.
I want the Oof keys. I don't want the others.
Yeah, I just maybe don't get it, right? Because I'm not in that particular, niche in the community. But hey, if people want it, why not?
Call
Okay,
out a
that's fair.
specific example.
I want to like ride that and say that like I don't know if any of you guys have watched, but P Wade and Dong Blaster do a stream now called Key Set Crimes
It's so
on
good.
Wednesdays, where it's literally it's like that question incarnate, where it's like we're just going to make, I mean, for lack of better phrasing, it just feels like a shitpost stream, and they take it seriously in the themes that they want to produce. And you know, I've never personally been one for meme sets, but seeing some of the stuff that they're doing and just kind of how they're enjoying it really makes me tempted to buy
What's
into
really interesting about it though is that some of these meme sets that come out actually end up being really good. Like you can look at Dots, for example. That was an April Fool's joke, right? And it came out great. It's fantastic as a key set. You know, there's Hamon and other sets out there. They all started as April Fool's jokes. They weren't ever intended to run, but then you know they gained popularity. They got a following behind them, and they're out there in the world today. And people still like them and pay flip prices for them as well. So I don't know. I don't think we should ever rush to judge. Just because something isn't for you personally doesn't mean to say it shouldn't have a place in the market.
Oh, that's
GMK, may I
fair.
go win?
Americana. It's been
Oh,
renamed.
Americana, yeah.
I think actually some other people want to pick the mantle up on that one and try and come up with some ideas of how to do it, but I don't know. I think it's a while away yet.
I like it. So I think we can expand on a topic here. And maybe I'll start with switches and we can talk about key sets in a second. But IP seems to be a thing that continues to come up. Goat, what do you have thoughts on Switch clones? Like at what point, because obviously, you know, like the MX patent isn't a thing, and you know, there's hundreds of clones of the MX now. Do you have thoughts on an actual clone Switch? Like, does that even a thing that exists now? Like, I could steal the IP of another Switch because it's an MX already.
I don't. So the great question comes down then to what do you, and I specifically mean you since you're asking this question, justify as a different Switch, right? Is it a different colorway? What about different molds, different manufacturers? What about the same mold being passed off to a different menu? What about the same manufacturer using a different mold for the same Switch, right? Like where do you draw that line on a clone versus a different Switch?
Yeah, no, I don't have a good answer for that. I'm just really interested in.
Well, I mean, that's the
where
thing.
we as a community land on it, because there's so many variables, right? Like,
Sure, yeah, that's the thing. So, back when I first started, I mean, I started before all of this explosion in terms of Switch colors happened. So, for all of you that are older than me, I started collecting seriously right around the time that Novelius dropped, which were those box pink tactile looking Switches that have basically been relegated into the dustbin, for lack of better phrasing. And before that, the only things that were clones per se were these random Chinese manufacturers producing a Switch, right? So, but they were the standard red, blue, black, maybe brown. So, a great example of these, since they've decided to come back onto the scene, is this company called Wano, Huano, and they had produced these Wano blue, red, and I think blacks way back in the day. Literally just yesterday, or just yesterday or the day before, they reared their heads, at least to my attention, and they're starting to produce their own colored Switches now. But they pretty much are the same Switches they had back in the day. They're just now this bright recolored. They're jumping on that train. And so the question is, it's like, you know, are those just trying to copy the hype that is going on now? Does changing molds count that question, or do changing of molds count as a different Switch? Another great example is Alpacas are getting a remake. I think they just sold a couple of days ago this new V2. It's like, are these clones of the originals? Are they not clones? So I mean, in short, I don't really know. I think the more expanded but shorter answer is it kind of depends on where we as a community draw that line from clone to not. You know, it's not just an OTD and a UTD where it's really easy to see that these were just copied like that.
yeah. So I'll ask this, then I'm curious about thoughts on some other things. But did we forgive JWK too soon? So Phylon asked the question after the Stelios fiasco. Did we say this is fine?
So actually, that's a funny story because I mean, too soon, right? You would think that maybe as a community we forgave them too soon, but there were actually like a brief moment between when we did accept them and when they had just ended that there was actually someone that got batted down in that in between time. So there was the Stelios controversy and the whole fallout with that. And then the first like real switches I think I remember seeing run were things like Okamochi and Pinocchio V1s, the original Prime KB3, those just three recolored ones. In the middle of that time, though, I think it was Invir. Invir had tried to get some sort of switches IC'd in that middle, and I'm blanking on what exactly they were. Um, and he had posted an IC up on Reddit and just got buried. I mean, just obliterated. And it was actually because of just getting brushed off that project altogether. He was like, screw it, and went on to start another project, which ended up being those ultra high molecular weight polyethylene stems. So it's funny that even that short time where we didn't forgive them quite yet ended up leading to another big product that's kind of making its rounds in various forms now. I
Interesting.
mean, as a whole, I don't think that we necessarily made them pay, if you will, for long enough. I think people seeing now how easy it is to just turn around and do an MOQ of switches and the cost associated with that. I feel like we're rushing toward a bubble. Like it's got to pop eventually because we just keep seeing recolors recolors, quote unquote, every 10 seconds. It feels like.
I think we definitely did. I think looking back on it, I think it sucks because KBD fans took the brunt of the
fault,
yeah, and the fire and the anger of the community, and then they took all of the bad stuff, and then JWK comes back around and is now giant, right?
And you don't see them selling anything from JWK anymore.
Right. And it sucks because now they can't cash in on a manufacturer that they basically brought to the community, not only through the Stelios, but they were the original manufacturer of the T1, which was a KBD fan switch. It was labeled with KBD fans for the round one. And so it sucks that they don't get to profit off the work they did with it, and they kind of just had to let that go. And JWK just kind of gets a pass because they do have good switches. There was really only, I think, one other thing that was involved with this that got kind of shot down. I remember right after everything happened, there was a guy on Reddit that was trying to run a T1 group buy, like days after the whole Stelio situation, through Duroc. And that got shut down, but then it was like a free for all from there. And then we started seeing all these.
That was that Invir post, or at least Invir had a hand in it, like I was saying.
Okay.
That is where, so yeah, there was literally just like brief hang time and one person got kicked out of it and then it just exploded.
Yeah, and it's been going ever since.
Funny enough as well, and not to spread any baseless conspiracies around, but one of the things in that, because we didn't like necessarily give it much hang time between when we initially punished them and when they became popular, is that there's something that I really don't think people consider, and I have a platform of 130 people now to start scratching their heads about it. If you go back to my original document where I wrote up all of this, I had gotten pictures from their marketing team there, and it had the different colored stems and stuff showing that, oh, we have Geekmaker like colored stems. One of the pictures has unmistakably colored stems that look exactly like cream stems, right? So there are what look exactly like that off-white, slightly brownish cream colored stem, and no one has really considered that if they had the capability, supposedly JWK has the capability of faking gas switches that much, what other switches out there might be cloned? Because for all we know, creams could be being faked right now based on that little bit alone. And how many other switches out there on the market are fake? I mean, we're actually starting to see this issue now. At least the collectors around me are starting to see this issue now in China, where holy pandas are getting cloned every day. And I actually have some quote unquote fake ones in the mail right now, and you can tell that they're fake because they have a different like thickness to the housing, and the actual Invir nameplate, even though the lettering looks correct, is just like upshifted by like a quarter of a millimeter, and it's very obvious that these aren't made by the same manufacturer. So it's like without that hang time where we really, sat back and kind of just let JWK and that whole situation breathe, I don't think people really thought about how many switches out there could easily be being cloned right now.
Well, my world just kind of exploded a little bit because I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. Well, there's also the conspiracy of, is a T1 just a Zelio mold with a slightly different stem? Like, I mean, the T1 it's not quite as tactile as like a V2, but it sits between like what a V1 and a V2 does in terms of tactility. Is it just a slightly modified stem from the molds that they supposedly had of the Telios? Like, did they also have Zeal V1 molds as well? Like,
well, I mean so the question on who owns the molds and all that's a very interesting one, because from what I understand, or at least from my understanding of the situation, was that Duroc was producing their own bottom housings. Now the question becomes, there's some debate at least to whether or not they were also making top housings and stamping them with Gatoron, or if they had bought those secondary, because according to that Mr. Psy or whatever, who had stepped in that middle translation, saying this is what actually happened between Lee and Psy and Gatoron and Duroc. He had said that they had bought Gatoron tops directly from Gatoron. So, I mean, they might not even have had those top housing molds. It might only have been bottom housing molds. And then the question becomes, did they even have those? Or were they just, something that they had reverse engineered on their own? It's a great question.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, kind of the chaotic neutral answer to this is the hobby really in a place to be picky about what we have and how much of it? Because if we took off all of JWK, let's wipe away JWK, it is now impossible to get almost any Switch.
well, it's kind of almost impossible to get JWK switches except
Already.
for in group buy.
Already.
So
So you wipe out what is most likely taking up 40% of Switch sales, and you take that away. We don't have Switches for our keyboards. Like creams become $3 a Switch because it's creams and inks now take over the linear realm, and they're already really good, and people already really like them. And when those have zero competition,
but I think we're not talking about should they not exist. I think we're talking about
the original thing
should
was
we
forgiven them?
Did we forgive them too soon? I think we did, but I think at this point now we would be well past the like I think JWK has done enough at this point with the recolors being open to allowing people to use their facilities and use their ability to make switches. What they're doing with novel keys with the silks and dries, I think they've done enough at this point to kind of come out of the Stelio situation. But I think we should have spent more time being like, hey, this is messed up.
So one thing that I want to point out that none of us mentioned, and I feel like every time Stelios are brought up, no one ever mentions that Zeal's the one that got fucked over. Zeal's the one that lost a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And none of us ever said Zeal got fucked. It was always KBD fans got screwed because they take the brunt of it. Zeal's the one that literally lost on thousands of dollars of sales because KBD fans either negligence or KBD fans skeeviness were that's what always baffles me is the blame starts getting pointed in so many different directions when it's like maybe buy from Zeal.
And it's fair, right? Because they, in the original like post that Zeal made, he made it clear that he went out and threw himself into the Chinese market to try and find where these were coming from, and he did a lot of that. Henry did a lot of that legwork. The only thing I think that with the only detriment, I guess, to the case for, well, we should be, or we could buy Zeal to make up for that, is that at least to many people, and whether or not I necessarily agree with this, it does not appear as if he is making any attempt to grow or change with this market, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had said novel key, silk, and dry, right? So Mike is obviously making a move to adapt to this new market for switches. He's getting new stuff made. He's doing, the recolors we saw with the random Frank P board, with the milkshake board as well. So those recolors of his silk and dries. But the problem is that what has Zeal done lately, right?
Yeah.
I see that one clicky, that all 3-in-1 switch, and then has just kind of not talked about it for months on end.
Yeah.
And him being unwilling to improve the tactility or the tolerances and the wobble in the face of someone like JWK, who's literally just, cranking out switches that are higher in quality, undeniably, with respect to things like wobble and tactility, strength, and smoothness. If he's not willing to adapt with those times, it's one of those. It's like, who do we blame then? Do we blame?
I think Zeal stepped out of the spotlight because of how bad and how poorly the Xeno
very possible.
group
I
went.
was about to say that's why that kind of gets lost there. It's because when all of this happened was when Xeno was like already 3 months late, and people were very upset because it was like there was no really like clear response from Zeal about what was even happening with that group buy or why it was going so. So that's
Yeah.
why I think people kind of were like, "What? Don't care about him."
Yeah.
There's a third option to this as well. Perhaps Zeal's happy with how many Zelios he's selling. Clearly, they do still sell. People still buy them.
Yeah.
Is he comfortable where he is in the market? I am not speaking for him because I have no idea, but he could be just absolutely comfortable where he is in the market right now and doesn't feel a need to step up and do anything new.
And I would be remiss if we didn't say that Zeal Henry, like from everything I understand about the individual, is a lovely human being, and like personally is a great person. So us talking about this is not indicative of us disliking him or Zeal at all. I just want to make sure to be very clear on that.
And also, he's done some things with minor tweaks, right? He's done the Xylent. He's tweaked the Xylents a bunch, but a lot of people don't. There's a big chunk of the community doesn't really follow Xylent changes that much, and there were kind of like recolors and stuff, but then that started getting overshadowed with JWK coming in.
And if you want to consider the whole of the work that he's done, right? And I did, because I literally crawled every single Geek Hack page that he had ever posted about Zelios. And someone, DD Justy, who's a fellow collector, had really helped me out with this. And back when he started the Zelios, right? At the time, it was really just like you had ergo clears. That was the standard in terms of tactility, and he wanted to make something that was better. Like, he was, at the time, one of the first people to like really push the idea that we could do custom switches. And over the course of the entire Zeal history, while there have only been the originals and V2s and then a couple offshoots, their clear linears, the Rosalios, the Helios, stuff like that, there are at least documented like 92 or 93 different Zeal switches over that time. And those are even just like him saying, I tweaked this housing for round 4 of Zeal V1s or whatever. So to his credit, all of that work that he did, regardless of how you feel about him now, honestly has set the stage for people being able, like C3 and JWK, to be able to actually make all these custom switches, and we're not just caught with the the big standard Otemu, Cherry, Gatoron, stuff like that. So to his credit, he's more responsible, I think, for where we are now than JWK itself, even though JWK is producing that bulk of switches.
Yeah. So just because we're coming close to time, and we've got what did we end up titling that, because it is incredible. Chubies is going to be doing typing a fierce intimacy with speed on his channel, which is lovely. He's going to do a typing demonstration. He's got a couple of camera angles, so if you're into learning how to type correctly or more quickly, please stay, and we're going to raid that channel. But to put a bow on the conversation around switches and JWK, the first Keybspiracy I ever posted came from, I don't even remember who. I haven't credited them, but the Keybspiracy is that JWK intentionally leaked that they were making near perfect ripoffs so that they could get their name out there, and then just started making switches that weren't Zeals anymore. Look at how good we are, and now we're making these.
Could be true.
Could be true. Could be true. Just like all the GMK Keybspiracies we've got too.
I actually, so there was before I completely just, tangential this entire conversation in this segment of the chat, there was a question asked like way at the beginning of this section, and I want to get back to it because I know he's still watching. But shout out to Vanilla from the Ohio Mechanical Keyboard server. He had asked way back at the start of this, and we just had already been off into the weeds. And I guess I'll pose this to you guys as well because we have a vendor and streamers and designers all here. The question is how do you guys as vendors, designers, creators, stuff like that, see yourselves being able to make this hobby appealing to people outside of the community, right? Because you can make a keycap set that's interesting to people in the hobby, but obviously we are getting a lot more people into this hobby and our reach is starting to get further outside of this community. So how do you see yourselves, doing things to try and bring newer people in who have not a clue what's going on with all of this?
Well, the target demographic, honestly, is gamers, right? PC gamers, people who build computers. They're like, hey, you build a computer, why not build a keyboard? Like, you go after the people that are going to be using this a bunch, right? It's going to be, I know Cyrus is always, it's a tool. It's a tool that you use every single day. Why, if you sleep on a nice bed, you own a very nice chair that you work in, if you have the best monitor, the best gaming computer, the best mouse, why stop there? Why not have the best keyboard you can possibly have? Or maybe not even the best, but the most tuned to you. You own a lot of things in your house because it might not be the best, but it's the one that you like the most. And that's, to me, that's how you bring people in is, hey, just because don't feel like you have to like one of these 3 keyboards that Corsair sells with one of these 3 switches, because there's so many more options and you can tune it specifically to what you want. And that's where I always land.
You've hit a great point there, Chewy. One of the big things that I see is we get quite a lot of people come to the Prototypist warehouse. So this is vendor now. And people always don't, it might be delivery people or it might be the tax man or the accountant or whoever's coming in. Most people just don't understand that, like, why keyboards? What is it about a keyboard? And you hit the nail on the head there. And the easiest way I can explain to most people that are outside of the hobby, that aren't gamers, don't do anything like that, is if they were a tradesman, they wouldn't think anything about spending $1,000 on a drill or whatever other tool they wanted. That would be the tool that they needed to do their job. Or a laptop or whatever the tool is. And the big thing for us is the keyboard is a tool. Whether you're a coder, a gamer, a developer, whatever you are, that's what you want to, writer even, that's what you want to use to input, and you want a good piece of hardware to be able to do it. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that particular point, too. Yeah, it's the easiest way to explain it to people.
It's
in terms of how we. Sorry, go on, Cyrus.
Oh no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in terms of how to open up to new people, though, it's kind of looking at those people who are beginners and trying to work out where they want to be. Not everyone wants to spend $150 on a GMK set. Some people want to spend $30 on a keycap set. And it's making sure that there's products at prices available across the spectrum. Whether that be keyboards, keycap switches, there needs to be a spectrum of stuff. The higher end stuff, the medium stuff, and the beginner stuff, just so that people have choice. The more choice people have, the better it is. The harder it becomes to explain what the choices are and what the differences between them are, but the more choice is better in the market, I think.
And I was just gonna say it's another thing, like, for some people it's like how fashion is, right? This is a form of self-expression, right? Some people may not be into Supreme and Off-White and that kind of, or like the high fashion Prada stuff, but they want to express themselves in a different way, and their keyboard gives them the ability to do that, and it's something that they enjoy. And I think it's a very cool, it's a very fun way to get involved in a hobby with people who are passionate about something. And I think showing people that it's not just about the products, but that the community is also great, and that community aspect, and showing them that really gets people hooked, I guess. Because I can't remember who said it earlier, but they're like, I think it was Theremin Goat was talking about how he's more inclined to buy a board or buy a keycap set from a designer that he knows and someone that he enjoys personally, because there's an emotional connection between those two people, and in return that product. I think it's great. Some of my best friends, I mean, obviously Chewy's my best friend, and we've created this show. We created Mechs on Deck. But I hang out with people like every single day from Keyboards and talk to them every single day from Keyboards because they are great people, and this community is filled with amazing people. And it's a cool way to find new friends.
Agreed.
And to kind of tie the full bow on this, right? Start out with the question I was asked about favorite this, and kind of taking the things from community and what Jay had said about the price range is that if you are someone who's like brand new and you are listening to this, first of all, I'm surprised that you've gotten exactly to this conversation and this far along in the stream. But the question that people always get is, what do I get? And that is whatever the hell you want to get. Preference is what you want in this. It's your money you're spending. Just because Jay wants to spend $1,000 on this board and I want to use a Vortex Race 3, that's completely on preference. Don't let anyone in this hobby push you into getting something that you can't afford, that you aren't even interested in. You just want it for the hype. These are your keyboards. And at the end of the day, when people ask me all the time, what's the best switch? What's your favorite switch? And it doesn't matter. What matters is what you're going to use at the end of the day. So, and that is everything in this hobby.
I don't think we could end that conversation any better. So thank you for that, Goat, and thank you for joining us on that, on having this discussion. And Jay, last minute joining in. So what's going to happen now is we're going to take this stream and we're going to raid our friend Chewies, who's going to talk to us about typing, a fierce intimacy with speed. And after that, he's going to bring it back to Mechs on Deck, and we're going to do some stuff. Hopefully we can play some games. Jay, you're welcome to join us. Maybe we'll have an Among Us game or two. But after that, we're going to play some marbles and do some giveaways. So stick around, learn about typing, join us for some silliness, and follow the raid. So, gentlemen, any thoughts before we move on over?
See you in a bit.
Where's Brian?
Probably not up yet. He might be up.
That's fair. I'm quitting. I love you, Jay. I haven't seen your beautiful face in too long.
Make you blush.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see y'all in a little bit. Go enjoy the fierce intimacy with speed.
Oh, I love it.